Um, well, I didn't even plan this, but speaking of animals in a house,
Yes. Jumanji.
Jumanji! So, you know what the most astounding thing that hit me as I was rewatching this movie was?
What's that?
Sony made the right choice to make a follow up or to reboot the series with The Rock at the head of it.
Yeah.
Because so Jumanji is it is a very accurate retelling of the children's book. Did you ever happen to see that one?
I didn't. No.
So Jumanji was a picture book first published in the 80s that I happened to have read before the movie came out. And in retrospect, I almost wonder if they did like a reprinting of it in anticipation of the movie coming out, and that's why it ended up in my elementary classroom. But that's
Yeah.
neither here nor there. But it's basically I looked it up. The creator of it had said that he had the notion that when you're playing a board game, you're having to imagine what's going on, and well, what if there was a jungle themed board game where you didn't have to imagine it and just whatever you happened to roll came to life in your house?
Uh,
And so it's more of an illustration book than an actual story because it's just, a bunch of chimpanzees in the kitchen or whatnot.
yeah, yeah, or a lion in the bedroom, or
Yeah,
elephants and rhinos running around. Yeah.
right. And it just all goes away when the game is over.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like when they tried to make a movie out of The Grinch or Horton Hears a Who.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, but how do we fill 90 minutes?
Yeah. 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 It's. I remember. I mean, I remember when this movie came out. It wasn't really like. I think there were some kids that I knew that were really enjoyed it, and I think others were like, that looks stupid." I think I was in the "it looks stupid" category.
Young Daniel turned out to be right.
Yeah. Um, but yeah. So I guess we'll get briefly into the plot of the movie. So it starts off where these two youngsters have this Jumanji board game that they bury because
In 1869.
1869, and then whatever it is, 100 years later, it gets dug up because Robin Williams his character is a kid. He comes from a real wealthy family that basically employ. It sounds like his dad owns the shoe factory and probably employs the entire town, or most of the town. And they're doing some construction around, and then that's when they dig up the board game, and he takes it home with him. And of course, Alan is his name, and Alan's dealing with the usual stuff that most kids deal with. Absentee parents. Well, maybe, well, not most kids, but
It's a very 90s type of thing because it's a very 90s vision of bullying where they just like randomly out to beat you into the ground for no reason.
yeah, yeah, and steal your property.
Yeah. If only there was like some group of people
Yeah,
whose
yeah,
job was to address criminal trespasses of some sort. Perhaps they could have matching uniforms so you could know who they were, and they could drive specially marked vehicles that labeled them as such. And there could be a short, simple phone number that one could dial in order to reach them if you couldn't find one in person. But such is the realm of fantasy and imagination.
indeed, yeah, yeah. Oh, jeez.
Especially
Uh,
considering that his dad is the richest man in town. You think that if he probably could just ask the police for help and they would do it just as a favor for his dad.
yeah, yeah. Oh, jeez.
Because that's actually like his character thing is early on. It's like he wants to run away from his problems, and isn't part of his journey that he has to learn to stand up for himself or stand up to his problems.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Jeez.
so you'd think that a kid like that who had those resources would demand help from the police or have his dad help him demand help from the police.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But yeah. So so he's about to run away from home because his parents want to send him away to this all boys school, and he doesn't want to go. And then the girl, uh, the girl who's like the girlfriend of the bully, shows up to return his bike, but then they end up playing the game together. And Alan rolls the dice, and then he gets sucked into the game.
Cut to 30 years later, where so this movie basically has two prologues.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got the scene in 1869 with the two kids burying the game, and then Robin Williams as a kid. Yeah.
And I remember as I was watching it the last weekend that it seemed odd structurally because it's like, well, these two kids are our main characters, aren't they? Like these two modern kids are the main characters. So wouldn't it make more sense just to kind of meet Robin Williams as somebody who had been trapped by the game and him just be a supporting character? No, he is actually the main character. It's just that the movie is very muddled about. He just vanishes for a huge chunk of the movie.
Right. Yeah. And yeah. So then, yeah, we got the two kids who are living with their aunt. Their aunt's played by BB Newirth, and of course, the girl is Kirsten Dunst. And before she was Mary Jane. Um, and they're of course they're living with the aunt because their parents died, and they're moving into the old house, because and she aunt wants to turn it into a bed and breakfast. And then that's when of course then the kids, they hear the drums from the game, and then they find the game up in the attic, and then uh, start playing it. And then one of the kids rolls I think they have to either like roll a 5 or an 8
Hmm.
to
Right,
get. Yeah.
and that's what trapped Williams in the game is that, oh, until the next player rolls a 5 or an 8, you will be stuck in the jungle or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, so they rolled a whatever, a 5 or an 8, and then he pops out. And Ninja says that he's Team Sathura, and what?
Oh, it's the space-based version of Jumanji that got a movie in like 2005 or so.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I think what's her name was in that, Twilight girl. Uh,
Oh, oh my. Okay.
yeah. But yeah, but anyway, so so then, yeah, of course, Robin Williams is not, he's been in the jungle for the last 30 years, so he's not in his right mind. And
Yep, he's just in a loincloth and leaves. And
yeah.
so, so I'll say that some of the positives here are there are like nice little moments of humanity from Williams. Like he sees a toilet for the first time in 30 years, like, ah, no more banana leaves.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say, he was really good at that sort of thing. He was funny, but he also had a lot of heart in his performances. And you kind of saw a little bit of that with this movie.
Hmm.
But and especially that the part when, the one, he's really getting on the boy and kind of getting on his case, and then he stops and he's like, "Oh God, I spent 30 years in the jungle, and I still turned into my father."
Yeah, there's some nice moments with him and the kids.
Yeah.
Um, Interspersed with it though is a bunch of CGI nonsense that's thrown at them,
Yeah,
uh,
mid 90s CGI.
which actually means that some of it was fairly convincing. Like the giant mosquitoes actually looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, the monkeys were horrifying. They kind of looked like the BBC Australopithecines from Walking with Prehistoric Beasts from the 2000s. Because
Oh, yeah.
like the monkeys looked fine until you saw their faces. Like,
Yeah.
weirdly, the 90s CGI lion looked better than the animatronic lion they used.
Yeah.
In
It's
fact, whoever was in charge of their animatronics dropped the ball. Like they had giant spiders in one scene, and the
Oh, those
animatronic
are
spiders looked awful.
yeah, they were. They were just they it looked like something from a really bad B movie. Yeah, just
Yeah, or like a bad child's toy. The way that they were
yeah,
just like those bad animatronics where like the legs don't actually move and they just kind of shuffles.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
kind of what the robot spiders looked like.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, and there's a reason why Spielberg only used the CGI sparingly in Jurassic Park because it just wasn't quite there yet. It was
No, and there were nice little touches. Like they had a I realize that we're kind of jumping around. The reason we're jumping around in this is actually brought up in Roger Ebert's review from the period that I decided to look up.
mm,
Uh, he likened it to the scenes in a video game where, and he was being very disparaging of video games, but it was also 1995. It's like
right.
the cut scenes were just there to set up the next action spectacle.
Mm.
That was kind of how he saw it, and they can't entirely disagree with him
No, no, I'd say that's fairly accurate. Yeah, um, yeah, it's yeah,
because like a lot of the time the heroes don't actually solve the problem. The problem just leaves the house.
yeah, and the I mentioned this, to you when I was watching it. I'm like, I'm not really, I wasn't really clear about the rules, what the rules of the game were, and it was just like, oh, you roll the dice and things happen.
Roll dice thing happen.
Yeah, and, and you just keep going until someone reaches the end. Yeah, it's
Yeah, and so like I was comparing it. You haven't seen the newer Jumanji movies, right?
not yet, but my parents have been bugging me to watch that because they really like that movie.
I'll definitely say that it's it, they're a lot of fun.
Yeah,
It is it's probably the best in that weird subgenre of movies that somehow exist of movies where the Rock walks around a jungle. It's probably Hawaii.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but some of the benefits that movie had was so they made it a video game, which meant that you could do things like give every character a special talent.
yeah.
Uh, the arbitrariness of the world made a bit more sense because it was basically the logic of a video game.
Mm.
It's like there were characters who were NPCs, and like, why are the bad guys bad? Because they're bad. Uh, there was also a goal because part of what I realized the problem here was that it was almost too faithful to the book, where it's like well, the whole premise of the book was roll the dice, things happen in the house until the game is over,
Yeah.
which makes it kind of difficult to set up stakes. Because
Yeah.
also this movie would have been terrifying for small children.
Yeah. It was rated PG, wasn't it?
Yeah, which I recall from the Ebert review, he was like, I don't know how this movie avoided a PG-13 rating.
Yeah. Man, yeah, it was pretty like yeah. There's some stuff in there, especially well, yeah, especially like when the kid turns into a monkey.
Right, the little son is turning into a monkey. Kirsten Dunst gets shot in the neck with three darts from a poison planted. They pulled them out, but there are still big three holes in there. It's like,
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, yeah, it was pretty. The moments in this, yeah, were pretty terrifying. Yeah,
oh, they had that great white hunter guy down there in the bottom right. He
yeah,
goes down to a gun shop, bribes the shop owner, and gets himself a modern, fully automatic weapon.
yeah, yeah. And then and then he asks him if he's a mailman. Like, okay,
Yeah, that's a very 90s reference there to people going postal.
yes, yeah,
Uh, a-
yeah,
and the disappointing thing is how the movie ends,
yeah,
uh, because they get to the end and the game never happened. Ooh.
yeah. See, I thought it was going to be kind of like Cat in the Hat, where everything just went back to normal. Um, uh, yeah, but that's not what happened. And then they did they do like a time travel Deus Ex Machina where Alan and the girl are kids again, but they still have all their memories from from the other timeline, and then
Right.
uh, yeah,
So they're able to go tell the dad to, and this was a weird secondary character, a guy who had worked at the shoe factory, but Alan accidentally put his prototype modern tennis shoe uh, into a machine which destroyed it,
yeah,
which then caused him to get fired. So he became the police officer who was around the whole movie.
yeah, and yeah, kind of bumbling his way through the entire time. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
but like, so they go back in time and they convince, he's so happy to see his parents, and the town isn't destroyed because of jobs moving overseas, because they come out with this amazing shoe, and
yeah,
he takes over the company, and the the nice not police officer man doesn't become a police officer, and they manage to use time travel stuff to make sure the kids' parents are never in that car accident, so everything's good.
right, yeah, yeah, and then the two are married and they got a kid on the way, and yeah,
Yeah. And also, we kind of glossed over discussing the characters besides Williams. His love interest is was horribly traumatized by what she saw in front of him, and was on medication because she kept insisting that she saw him get swallowed up by a board game.
yeah,
Uh, and she was a psychic fraudster. The little boy was selectively mute. Kirsten Dunst's character was a pathological liar, which had some of the better lines in the movie,
yeah.
but just nothing was very consequential, unfortunately.
No, no, yeah, yeah, I remember. Well, the other thing too, I remember this movie kind of being a real big hit when it came out, and I'm like, why?
Well, like for the '90s, besides Jurassic Park, you probably hadn't seen creature effects on this level before.
Yeah, that's true.
And
Yeah,
I will say, like, so even where the technology wasn't quite there yet, the monkeys moved like monkeys. They had a amusing thing with the huge stampede that was just never ending of the elephants and the rhinos and everything, where there was one like tired, kind of fat, or either older or fatter looking rhino who was always bringing up the rear.
yeah,
So like there was a little bit of heart put into this movie in places. It just wasn't in the scripting phase, unfortunately.
right, yeah. Yeah, and then well, Ninja's really kind of talking up Zathura. I guess we should probably try to watch that at some point.
Yeah, it could be worth a shot.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, but yeah, yeah, I wasn't really entirely sold on this movie. It just, yeah,
no, and the weird thing is, in my memory, I actually remembered a scene that didn't exist, where you had Williams in the jungle. Like that was firmly in my head that at some point in the movie he got it. He like you saw him in the jungle, and
yeah,
I almost want to say it's because my young mind wanted something more interesting to hold on to.
yeah. Well, either that or it might have been a deleted scene that was in the trailer, and then they took it out of the movie.
That's possible. I'm more willing to think that just because it's been 30 plus years since I saw this, it's just uh, a jumbled memory.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
But so this is a movie that yeah, the reboot where they totally undid the previous movie. Well, actually, this movie could have been in continuity with the later movies. If we ever review those, you'll see what we mean.
okay.
But anyways, the reboot was the right choice.
Okay.